Hey everyone, welcome back to today's video, and I'm going to be explaining what is called a while loop. In programming, we have different types of loops, and they are exactly what they sound like. You loop around and around and around doing the exact same thing while a condition is being met, and that there's a block of code that's just being executed over and over and over again while a condition is being met. So let's write our while loop, if I can actually talk. And let's set up an example. So in the last video, we talked about having booleans. And so we want to check and see if the lights are on. So let's say we have a boolean of is on. And at the moment, we're going to say it's false. So let's write our first loop. We're going to say while. You'll type out the actual word while, and then you're going to type out the open and close parentheses, and we're going to set our condition inside of these parentheses. And so let's go ahead and just say while is on. So while the lights are on, let's write to the console and say, turn off the lights. So let's run our code. And you can see that it says press enter to terminate the program. We never hit this block of code because it works kind of like an if statement. Imagine instead of a while, it said if is on, execute this block of code. We never executed that block of code because the condition was not met. Is on equals false, so it's not on. So let's give it another try. And let's go ahead and set is on to true. And what's gonna happen is it's gonna go ahead and say while this is true, is on, execute this piece of code. But remember, if we do an if statement, it executes this piece of code, and then after line 23 it's done, and then it executes console right line, press enter to terminate the program. Let's run our program with an if statement, and we see that that's what's happened. It met the condition. If is on, say turn off the lights. And then it moved on, and it says press enter to terminate the program. With a while loop, what's going to happen is the condition will be met. This piece of code will be executed, which is line 22. And it'll actually loop back up to line number 21. And it'll execute this piece of code again. Go down to line 23, loop back over to line 21. And execute this piece of code again. So now you have a loop. You're inside of a loop, and the condition is always being met because this boolean is always true. So it's saying while is on, always output this piece of code, but loop back to line 21 again and again. Actually, it's looping back to line 20 because it's meeting the condition over and over again. So while is on, go ahead and turn off the lights. Say turn off the lights. So let's go ahead and run this and check it out. We have many times and many console write lines to the console that say turn off the lights, turn off the lights, and it's happening so fast we can barely even tell a difference. So let's add a counter. If we add an integer and we name it counter, let's set it to 0, and let's concatenate that counter in front of turn on the lights and add a space. And anytime this piece of code gets executed, we're going to go ahead and reassign the value of counter as itself +1. So it'll be 0 plus 1 is 1. Once it's executed again, it'll say 1 plus 1 is 2. And so we're going to get a count now. Let's execute the program and start the debugging process. And look at the counter. We can actually see a difference now, but it's going so fast that we're over 50,000 lines of code. We're over 100,000 lines of code already. And here we can see how fast this is being processed, and it's just going through the while loop. And this will go on forever until the processor or the memory allocated for this program and our operating system no longer has resources and it gets shut down. But that's going to take quite a bit of time. So there is no way to exit the while loop at the moment because the condition is always on. So let's use an if statement like we did in the past videos, and let's go ahead and turn off the lights. So we have a counter that is counting how many times we've executed this piece of code. And let's say turn off the lights if we've said turn off the lights, let's say 10,000 times. Okay. So now let's do an if statement, which we've used in the past. And we're going to say if the counter is not equal to something, but yeah, let's do equal to something. So if the counter equals one more for 10,000, then we're going to say is on equals false. And here we turn off the lights. Let's see what happens. Now it's counting. We're at 4,000, 6,000, 8,000, and boom, we hit 10,000 lines of turn off the lights. And now it says press enter to terminate the program. And so what happened here is this condition was true. It was always true, and there was no change of the value of the Boolean until we hit 10,000 lines of code. We know that because we're counting them with the counter, and we turned off the lights. We can always say console.writeLine, the lights are off. So here we are using if statements, we're using Booleans, and we're using the while loop. All these elements that and concepts that we've learned in past videos, and we're putting them together, and we're starting to get a little bit more of logic, and we're starting to see pieces of what we've learned come together to kind of start to create kind of these cool little experiments. But this will run up until 10,000, and the lights are off. So that's how you use a while loop. Let's change this up a bit. Remember, it's kind of nice for readability to have a Boolean for the condition of the if statement. So let's say we have another Boolean limit. Let's say is limit. The limit is 10,000, so we'll say counter equals, let's say 20,000 this time around. We'll double it. And so we'll say if is limit, then turn off the lights. Okay, let's go ahead and run this again. And this will run now up to 20,000. So we have 8, 9, 10, and there we go. It hits 20,000 and the lights are off. Isn't that wonderful? And I feel like it goes way faster after we reach 10,000. The lights are off. Press enter to terminate this program. Let's do that. And let's make this a bit more simple. Okay, so we have a while loop and it's checking this Boolean. And this Boolean is being used here in the main conditional statement that is checked by the while loop. Let's make this a bit better. So instead of checking for the limit here, let's check for the limit in the while loop. So let's say while counter is less than 10,000, we're back to 10,000. Then let's go ahead and say turn off the lights. We're still going to keep the counter. We're just going to say turn off the lights. Let's get rid of this piece of code, which is line 25 through 33. And so this is starting to look a little bit cleaner. And it says while the counter is less than 10,000, add to the counter and say turn off the lights. Let's get rid of this boolean because we don't need it anymore. Okay, so now we got rid of more variables and we're just using the counter. Well, let's run this and see what happens. Okay, it's 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. We get the exact same thing. The program has not changed. It executes exactly the same for the end user, but our code is a little bit cleaner. We're just going to go ahead and say, hey, you know, all I care about is this counter, and this condition is being returned as true or false. Is the counter less than 10,000? If it is, then go ahead and add to the counter and write turn off the lights. And so that's a while loop. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you guys like the video or have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel.